You know what hurts more than physical pain? It's when the people you've quietly carried for years turn around and mock you for not doing even more. You ever been laughed at by the very people who owe you their comfort? Who live in apartments you helped cover the deposit for? Who eat dinners you've indirectly paid for? If you've ever stood in a room full of family, smiling through humiliation because you were too ashamed to tell the truth, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like, and leave a comment with your city and the current time. You're not alone. Now, let's listen to my story journey. It was my sister Chloe's 30th birthday party. A rooftop affair, strung lights, catered sushi, a custom cocktail menu with her name in calligraphy. Everyone looked flawless. The men wore linen shirts, the women in soft dresses and gold. I stood near the bar in a dress I'd borrowed from a friend, my palms damp, my stomach already turning. I hadn't brought a gift. Not because I forgot, not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't. Not after covering half the deposit for the venue last month when Chloe's credit card bounced. Not after floating our brother Jason's rent just this once again. Not after buying groceries for mom when her disability payment got delayed. Again. So, no, I didn't bring a gift. I didn't have anything left to give. I told Chloe I couldn't afford to contribute to her gift registry. She'd said, "No worries at all, just come celebrate." I believed her. That was my mistake. Near the cake table, I heard it. "Well, I guess Emily's gift is showing up," Chloe quipped, holding a glass of Prosecco and a smile sharp enough to cut. Jason snorted. His girlfriend let out a fake gasp and whispered something, which set off another round of giggles. Even Mom, sitting on one of those cushioned rental chairs with a paper plate of cake on her lap, shook her head with a tiny smirk. I didn't say a word. I just smiled. Tight, automatic, practiced, and turned back toward the city skyline, pretending to admire the view. Because what could I say? "Actually, Chloe, I paid for the balloons and the backup generator." "Actually, Jason, the only reason you're wearing designer sneakers is because I loaned you $600 2 weeks ago." "Actually, Mom, your medicine refill last month came from my overdrafted account." No, you don't say those things. Not when you've been cast as the responsible one, the financial cushion, the go-to fixer. You swallow it. You stand there and let them laugh, because correcting them would mean confessing the truth, that I'd built my life around keeping theirs from falling apart. The rest of the party moved like a dream I couldn't wake up from. Chloe opened gifts, handbags, spa vouchers, designer sunglasses. Everyone oohed and ahed. Jason handed her a box and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Some of us come prepared." Laughter again. More eyes in my direction. I felt like a stray dog someone had let in from the cold. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled and offered to help clean up. As I wiped cake crumbs off a marble countertop, Chloe passed by and said, "You could have at least written me a card." I looked at her. Really looked. Not the curated version in gold heels, but the little girl who used to cry when she had to share her toys. The woman I'd helped through 2 breakups, 3 jobs, and 1 abortion she never told Mom about. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Later that night, when I got home, I sat on my floor in the dark, shoes still on, arms wrapped around my knees. I replayed the scene over and over. The laughter, the tone, the audacity, and underneath it all, the ache. The kind of ache that comes from being invisible until you disappoint them. They laughed because they could, because they assumed I'd always be there, always patching the holes they left behind. But that night, something shifted. I stared at the ceiling, a single thought burning in my chest. They have no idea who's been keeping their world spinning. I used to think being dependable was a virtue. That if I just gave a little more, stretched a little thinner, everyone would be okay. And maybe, finally, they'd see me. But invisibility has a strange way of snowballing. It starts with covering a bill here, doing a favor there. Before long, it becomes your identity. You stop being the sister, the daughter, the person, with needs, flaws, dreams, and you become a resource. I didn't always mind. In the beginning, I even felt proud. I was the one who made it out of our chaotic household and found stability. I worked full-time while studying accounting, paid off my student loans early, and got promoted twice before I turned 28. When Mom's hours got cut at the pharmacy, I picked up the slack. When Jason totaled his car, I co-signed the lease on another. When Chloe got laid off, I paid her cell phone bill for 6 months so she wouldn't fall off the grid. They never asked directly, not at first. It was more like little hints, soft sighs, dropped phrases. I don't know how I'm going to get through the end of the month. This bill came out of nowhere. I'm not asking for help, but so I helped. Again and again, quietly. I told myself I was lucky to be in a position to help. I reminded myself that not everyone had my opportunities. I convinced myself this was what love looked like, showing up no matter what. But the problem with being generous in silence is that nobody hears the cost. They only see the result. They see Chloe's Instagram posts at brunch, the shoes Jason buys on sale, Mom's house with the fixed plumbing, but not my bank statements, my sleepless nights. The number of times I microwaved rice and eggs while scrolling past photos of them living better on my dime. I remember one night, maybe a year before the birthday party, I had just come home from a 10-hour shift, followed by a freelance bookkeeping gig I did on the side. My back ached, my eyes burned. I sat down and opened my laptop, trying to transfer money from my savings to help cover Chloe's security deposit for a new apartment. As I logged into my banking app, I saw it. $327. That's all that was left in checking. And then, a notification. Jason had just Zelled someone $90 for dinner and drinks. I knew because I was linked to his account for a loan I'd co-signed. I stared at the screen, numb. I wasn't just enabling them. I was erasing myself. They never asked if I needed anything, never wondered how I could afford to help so much. They just assumed that I was fine, that I'd figure it out, that I'd keep going. And honestly, I enabled that assumption because what would happen if I said no? What if I asked for help? I tried once, just once. It was after my car broke down and I didn't have enough to cover both the repair and the rent. I mentioned it casually during a family dinner at Mom's. I said something like, "It's been a tight month, thinking of picking up another side gig." Silence. Jason changed the subject. Chloe made a joke about how some of us are addicted to working. Mom offered me leftover pie. Not a single follow-up question. That was the moment I realized they didn't want to know, because knowing would mean acknowledging, and acknowledging would mean responsibility. So I went back to nodding, smiling, and wiring funds behind the scenes. I kept being okay even when I wasn't. I kept saying, "Don't worry about it," even when I was screaming inside. I kept paying, financially, emotionally, spiritually, all while they built their lives on the scaffolding of my sacrifice. They were the picture of middle-class success. Chloe with her flawless aesthetic and yoga classes. Jason posting motivational quotes from his balcony view. Mom in her tidy house with the repaired gutters and stocked fridge. I was the scaffolding. Invisible, essential, and never meant to be seen. Until that birthday night when the scaffolding cracked. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, heart buzzing like a hornet nest. Not just from humiliation, but from clarity. For the first time, I saw the whole structure for what it was. They thought I was cheap. They thought I didn't care, because they'd never taken the time to understand what I gave. And that was the deepest cut of all. When you grow up in a house like mine, roles get assigned early, and they stick like skin. I was the eldest, the planner, the one who got straight A's, remembered birthdays, stayed out of trouble, the one who made her own lunch in second grade, while Jason forgot his books and Chloe threw tantrums about wearing tights. By the time I was 10, I'd learned how to talk Mom down from her panic attacks and help Jason with his homework because Dad was already halfway out the door. He eventually left when I was 12. No dramatic goodbye, just a garbage bag stuffed with jeans and a final slam of the front door. After that, it was just us. Mom unraveled slowly, first in late rent notices, then in silence, then in wine. And me, I learned to be useful, to anticipate needs, to stay quiet, stay steady, stay good. I don't blame her, not anymore. She was doing her best with a broken compass and no backup. But in trying to hold the family together, she made me the glue and forgot I was also made of paper. Jason got to act out. Chloe got to fall apart. I got to hold the umbrella while the house caught fire. And somewhere along the way, we stopped being a family and became a system that ran on me. I remember one time, I was 16. Chloe stole a necklace from a department store. Mom was beside herself, cried all night, but the next morning, she drove me to the store to return it, told me to do the talking. "You're good with people," she whispered. "They'll believe you." I stood there, explaining the mistake as if I had taken it. The manager let it slide. Chloe stayed home watching cartoons. It's such a small memory, but it explains everything. From that moment on, I was the one who fixed things, cleaned things, covered things. Even as adults, it never shifted. Chloe crashed her car. I figured out the insurance. Jason missed a tax deadline. I filed his extension. Mom needed a co-signer on the new lease. I didn't even flinch. But the cost? It wasn't just money. It was the slow erosion of identity. While they experimented with lives, trying things, failing, starting over, I curated one that was clean, functional, and supportive of theirs. I passed on graduate school because Jason had just dropped out of his program and someone needed to help with rent. I stayed local when Chloe needed help with her new baby. I skipped vacations because there's no one else Mom can call if something goes wrong. I wasn't living, I was managing. And the most dangerous part, I didn't even resent it, at least not at first. I thought being needed was love, that being indispensable meant being cherished. But over time, love without recognition starts to rot. And responsibility without appreciation, that's not noble, that's exploitation. They saw me as stable because I had to be. They saw me as strong because I wasn't allowed to be anything else. They saw me as someone who didn't need as much because I never showed them the truth. So when I didn't bring a gift to Chloe's party, they didn't see the years of sacrifice or the silent deposits or the unpaid therapy sessions I never had time to attend. They just saw the one thing I didn't do, and they laughed. That laugh was the final crack in the identity they'd built for me, the responsible one, the solid one, the silent sponsor of their lives. I realized in that rooftop moment that I'd been auditioning for a role I never even wanted, hoping for applause that would never come. And maybe the most devastating part? They weren't cruel, not intentionally. They were just conditioned to believe I'd always be there, holding the weight, because I always had been. But not anymore. Debt has many forms. There's the kind you can track with statements, balances, due dates. And then there's the quieter kind, the emotional overdrafts, the invisible IOUs. By the time I turned 31, I had both. On paper, I was doing fine. I had a salary job at a mid-sized marketing firm. I paid my bills on time. My credit score was decent, hovering just above 700, despite the personal loans I'd taken out in the names of family emergencies. But the truth was messier. I was living in a tiny one-bedroom that barely saw daylight, with rent swallowing half my paycheck. I shared Wi-Fi with my upstairs neighbor to save on costs. I hadn't taken a real vacation in over 5 years. My clothes were clean and neat, but most were secondhand or years out of style. And still, I was covering for them. There was the time Jason called me on a Sunday afternoon, panic in his voice. "I forgot my car payment's due tomorrow. Can you spot me just this once?" Or the time Chloe emailed me a PDF of her overdue electric bill and wrote, "Oh, can you just take care of this? I'll Venmo you Friday." Friday came and went. So did the next. And Mom, sweet, fragile Mom, she didn't even have to ask anymore. She just sighed heavily about her prescriptions or the leak under the sink, and I'd log into my bank app, transferring money I didn't have without a word. I wasn't just bleeding money. I was hemorrhaging boundaries. Every dollar I sent felt like I was shrinking, becoming less of a person and more of a machine that dispensed solutions. There was one week I remember vividly. I had a cracked molar that desperately needed fixing. It throbbed every time I drank anything cold, but I postponed the dental work twice because Jason had overdrafted his account again and needed 200 onzas to cover a bounced rent check. I told myself I'd reschedule. I didn't. You can live with a little pain, I thought. You can't live with someone screaming that you let them down. That was my logic. That was how twisted it had become. I'd normalized sacrifice, romanticized it even. I started taking freelance accounting gigs on weekends, late-night invoice balancing for small shops, under-the-table tax filing. I told people it was for extra savings, but really, it was my way of plugging holes in a dam I wasn't even supposed to be guarding. Eventually, I started tracking things. Not for revenge, just for sanity. I made a spreadsheet titled, What I've Given. Line by line, I entered it all. Rent bailouts, utility payments, emergency transfers, plane tickets, grocery runs, subscriptions I was still paying for, Spotify Family, Netflix, Amazon Prime, all shared and never reimbursed. By the end of that night, the number at the bottom of the spreadsheet read, 62 hours were $138. 17, $62,000. My hands trembled. Not because of the number itself, but because I had never said it out loud, never acknowledged what I'd lost trying to keep others from losing. That number represented years of missed therapy, delayed goals, swallowed dreams. It was the graduate program I couldn't afford to pursue, the trip to Japan I always wanted to take, the down payment I never saved for. And still, they treated me like the least generous person in the room. They mocked me for not buying Chloe a scented candle, not realizing I'd already bought the heating bill that kept her apartment warm enough to enjoy it. I remember looking at that spreadsheet, blinking through tears. I whispered, I could have had a life. Because I didn't, not really. I had a ledger of love, one-sided, unreciprocated, and a quiet scream buried in every cell of my body. That was the week I stopped helping. Not all at once. I didn't make a scene. I didn't send a dramatic message. I just paused. The next time Chloe hinted about money, I told her gently, I'm not able to this month. When Jason called about his phone bill, I said, I wish I could, but I'm really tight right now. When Mom sighed about needing cash for a prescription, I offered to help her call her insurance instead of opening my wallet. The silence that followed was louder than any fight. Their disappointment wasn't vocal. It was passive, icy. Chloe stopped responding to my texts. Jason posted cryptic stories on Instagram about people who switch up when they get selfish. Mom started calling less. And for the first time in years, I didn't chase their approval. I sat in the stillness. I let the guilt come, then go. And then I looked again at that spreadsheet, my silent memoir of sacrifice, and said to myself, no more. When people are used to taking from you without limits, the first time you say no sounds like violence. It wasn't even a harsh no. I didn't scream or slam doors. I didn't block numbers or write scathing monologues in the family group chat. I simply stopped pouring from an empty cup. But you'd think I'd committed treason. It started subtly. The messages from Chloe got shorter. Where she used to send selfies and long voice notes, now I got K, or nothing at all. Jason, ever the passive-aggressive prince, posted memes that were clearly about me. Real ones don't need to be begged to show up. And Mom? She didn't even ask what changed. She just sounded tired every time we talked, her tone coated in vague disappointment. They didn't say it, but I could hear it. How dare you stop being what we need? I was still recovering from the emotional whiplash when Chloe texted me out of the blue one Friday. Hey, Mom's birthday dinner's at Osteria Loose, 7 p.m. next Thursday. Don't be late. No, please. No, can you afford it? No acknowledgement that I'd been ghosted for weeks. Just a command, like nothing had happened. Osteria Loose. A place where a glass of house wine cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I knew what that night would be. The same dynamic, dressed up in candlelight and faux pleasantries. I'd be expected to show up, smile, and maybe split the bill without complaint, because that's what Emily does. I almost didn't go, but a small, masochistic part of me wanted to see it. To see if they'd noticed the shift. To see if I could endure it without folding. So I went. The hostess brought me to a table already full. Chloe in a silk blouse, Jason with his arm draped over his girlfriend's chair, Mom beaming like a woman who'd raised harmony. Everyone looked surprised, but not necessarily pleased to see me. I sat quietly, ordered the cheapest pasta on the menu, and listened as they recounted their week like a panel of lifestyle influencers. Jason had a new startup opportunity. Chloe was building her brand. Mom was redecorating the guest room, which I knew meant I was still paying half the utilities. When the check came, the server placed it squarely in front of me. A reflex, maybe. Or maybe it was because Chloe nodded ever so slightly in my direction. The old me would have reached. Would have smoothed the moment with a card and a self-effacing joke. This time, I let it sit. Eventually, Jason picked it up, scanned it, and frowned. "Ugh, this place is ridiculous," he muttered. "We're splitting, right?" No one said anything. "Emily?" Chloe asked sweetly. "You good to handle Mom's portion? It was your idea to come, after all." I blinked. "My idea? You texted Mom earlier this week about dinner, right?" I stared at her. She was lying, brazenly. I hadn't spoken to Mom since the month before, but it didn't matter. She was playing the script, rewriting the scene before my eyes. They knew I wouldn't challenge it, that I hated confrontation, that I'd cave, like always. But I didn't. "No," I said simply. "I didn't make the reservation, and I'm only covering my own meal." Chloe's smile faltered. Jason scoffed. "Wow, seriously?" "Yes," I said, keeping my voice level. "Seriously." The table went quiet. Mom cleared her throat. "Emily, it's just one dinner. One of many," I said, calmly but firmly. "And I can't keep pretending it doesn't add up." Chloe laughed, but it was hollow. "You're being dramatic." I turned to her. "Do you know how much I've spent bailing you out over the past 6 years? Do you even remember the time I paid your deposit when your last landlord was threatening eviction?" Her eyes narrowed. "You said you wanted to help." "I did," I replied, "but that doesn't mean you are entitled to it." Jason leaned forward. "Why are you bringing this up now? It's Mom's birthday." Because I finally had nothing left to give. Because the silence was turning me bitter. Because watching them toast each other with the money I never had made me want to scream. I didn't say all that, but I think they saw it in my face. So I said something simpler. "I'm done being the invisible bank." No one responded. Not immediately. Eventually, Chloe pulled out her card with an audible sigh. Jason muttered something under his breath. Mom looked wounded, but didn't protest. I stood up, placed 2 20s on the table, and walked out. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't second guess. I didn't scroll through my messages, waiting for an apology that would never come. Instead, I lay in bed, the ceiling fan whirring above me, and felt something I hadn't in years. Space. The beginning of room. Room to feel. To process. To start over. And maybe, just maybe, to breathe without carrying the weight of everyone else's comfort on my back. A week after the birthday dinner, Chloe posted a group photo on Instagram with the caption, "Family is everything. Blessed are ride orty." I was cropped out, literally. You could see the edge of my arm at the far right of the frame. A sliver of navy blue sleeve cut just shy of my elbow. They had erased me with a swipe. And that, somehow, hurt more than the bill. More than the fake smiles. More than the lies. It said everything. You're no longer part of the narrative. The thing about being the reliable one is this. Once you stop showing up, people don't pause to ask why. They rewrite the story without you. And suddenly, you become the villain. She's changed. She's distant. She's not as generous as she used to be. They don't remember the late-night calls you answered, the overdrafts you covered, the days you went without to give them peace. They remember the one time you said no. That week, I found myself playing scenes from the past on repeat. Like the time Chloe threw a tantrum because I didn't attend her engagement party. Never mind that I was working 2 jobs and couldn't afford the gas. Or when Jason missed mom's rent payment and blamed it on me for not reminding him. Or even the holidays. The subtle digs about not bringing enough food, about always being busy. All those moments stacked like bricks. I'd been building a wall I didn't even realize was there until I was finally on the other side of it. And yet, the guilt didn't vanish overnight. I woke up in sweats, questioned myself, reread old texts to make sure I hadn't misinterpreted something, wondered if I was being cruel. But then, the silence came. They didn't reach out. No check-ins, no olive branches, just the cold, still hush of a family learning how to live without its utility provider. Until one afternoon, about 2 weeks later, I got the message from Chloe. Hey, not sure what's going on with you lately, but mom's upset. She says you've been avoiding her. We're planning a little dinner next Friday to clear the air. Hope you'll come. Don't bring anything, just show up. I read it 3 times. It was less of an invitation and more of a summons. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a command cloaked in soft words. For a moment, I considered going. The old reflex kicked in. Be the bigger person, smooth things over, protect the peace. But then I thought back to that spreadsheet. 62,438, 17, 62,000 ways I had disappeared myself. No, not this time. Instead, I replied, thanks for the invite. I won't be attending. Please let mom know I wish her well. No anger, no drama, just a line. The response was instant. Wow, that's cold, even for you. I didn't answer. Because here's the truth. Silence can be louder than a scream. And after years of carrying everyone else's noise, I was finally choosing my own quiet. That evening, I shut off my phone, lit a candle, made tea, sat on my couch, and did nothing but exist. No errands, no transfers, no mental math to see who I could afford to save. It was strange and peaceful. And a little bit terrifying, because when your whole identity has been wrapped around being needed, you don't know who you are when you stop. But I was starting to find out. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. I wrote about anger and longing and the heavy ache of always being the strong one. I wrote about all the things I never said at dinners, all the feelings I'd swallowed behind polite smiles. And with every word, I reclaimed a piece of myself. I signed up for therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I finally had space to examine the pieces I'd held together for too long. The first session, the therapist asked me, "What do you want, Emily?" I didn't have an answer, but the question haunted me, in the best way, because for the first time in my life, I was allowed to ask it. What do I want? What if I wasn't just the backup plan? What if I didn't have to be the fixer, the financier, the fallback? I didn't know the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being punished for having boundaries, done being laughed at for not giving more, when I had already given everything. That night, I sat by my window watching the city lights flicker. A thought crossed my mind like a gust of wind. They didn't laugh because I failed them. They laughed because they couldn't imagine I was the one keeping everything upright. And now that I was gone, they were going to feel the silence. They say the best revenge is living well. I don't know if I'd call it revenge, but I do know this. There's a kind of power in walking away without slamming the door, just locking it quietly behind you. After Chloe's message, there were no more invites, no more check-ins, just silence. And for a while, I expected it to sting. But the longer the quiet stretched, the more I realized it wasn't punishment. It was peace. I didn't realize how much noise I had absorbed for years. The constant hum of other people's emergencies. The buzzing guilt of just this once. The siren call of family chaos disguised as closeness. With that gone, I could finally hear myself think. I started cooking again. Not out of necessity, but joy. Real meals, with spices and playlists and wine. I walked to the park on Sundays, sat on a bench with a book, and didn't check my phone once. I deleted the family group chat, and I didn't miss it. But the universe has a way of testing your resolve. 3 weeks into my new stillness, Jason called. Not a text, not a DM, a call. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey," he said, voice low. "I know it's been a while, I didn't know who else to call." That was always the line. "What's going on?" I asked, flat. He sighed. "I messed up, okay? I took a gig with this startup. Didn't get paid on time. Rent's overdue. My landlord's threatening to file. I just need a short-term loan, just enough to cover—" No. There was silence on the line. The shocked kind. "I'm sorry?" he said, as if he hadn't heard me. I said, "No, Jason. I hope you figure it out. But I can't help you." A beat passed. Then another. "Wow," he said finally. "I always knew you were selfish. But this?" I almost laughed. The irony was poetic. "You're not mad I said no," I replied. "You're mad that no one else will say yes." He cursed under his breath and hung up. I sat there, the phone still warm in my hand. My heart was racing, but not from regret, from release. That was the last time I spoke to Jason. Chloe followed soon after. A few days later, I got a message. "You really think you're better than us now? Fine. Don't come crawling back when you need something." I read it once and deleted it. No reply. She unfollowed me the next day. Mom was different. No, her silence was slower, softer, laced with old sorrow. She sent 2 texts over the course of a month. "Hope you're okay. Let me know if you want to talk." I didn't answer right away. Because I wasn't ready. Because I needed to figure out what it meant to love someone without letting them hollow you out. Instead, I poured my energy into something else, something new. I applied for a position at a nonprofit I'd followed for years, one that helped low-income women gain financial independence. I wrote the cover letter from the heart, told them about the years I'd spent balancing other people's budgets, finding a way to give when I had nothing left, how I'd learned the hard way what financial abuse and guilt-based dependence looked like, even within a family. They called me for an interview 2 days later. And when they offered me the job, I cried. For once, I was using my skills to lift people who wanted to rise, who weren't demanding but grateful, who didn't guilt me for boundaries but respected them. I started seeing a therapist every Thursday. We unpacked years of patterns, learned behavior, and the subtle ways I'd taught people how to treat me. I learned that martyrdom is not love, that silence isn't strength if it keeps you drowning. That generosity, without limits, invites erosion. Most of all, I learned that the people who love you don't laugh when you're at your lowest. A month after starting my new job, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. But the handwriting was familiar. It was from Mom. Inside was a short note, 5 lines. Neat, careful cursive. "Emily, I've been thinking a lot. I didn't see it before, but I do now. I'm sorry. If you're ever ready to talk, I'll be here." I folded the letter gently, tucked it into a drawer. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because healing isn't a door you walk through once. It's a road, uneven, quiet, and slow. But I was finally on it, alone, but not lonely. And every step I took was mine. I didn't realize how much of my life had been lived in reaction to other people's chaos until I stopped living inside it. For the first time in over a decade, I wasn't waiting for a phone call to ruin my day. I wasn't budgeting my sanity around someone else's meltdown. I wasn't living on standby. It was disorienting at first. Healing is quiet in a way that feels unnatural when you're used to noise. I kept waiting for the next crisis. Some financial flare-up, some guilt trip, some emergency I'd be guilted into solving. But the silence held. And inside it, I began to build a new rhythm. I decorated my apartment. Nothing fancy, but intentionally mine. I bought curtains that softened the morning light, framed old photos from college, finally replaced the flickering kitchen light bulb I'd ignored for 2 years. I cooked for myself, not just out of necessity, but for joy. I took long walks without my phone. I joined a local book club. I even went on a few dates, real dates, with conversation that wasn't interrupted by frantic texts from Jason or Chloe's subtle emergencies. I wasn't running anymore. I was settling into the version of me I had buried under everyone else's comfort. At work, things blossomed too. The nonprofit gave me space to lead and to mentor, to help women who reminded me of myself. Too giving, too tired, too afraid to ask for what they deserved. I found purpose without pressure, impact without depletion. One afternoon, I was organizing documents for a financial literacy seminar when I got an unexpected call. Private number. I hesitated. Let it ring once, twice, then answered. Hello? It was Mom. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, unsure. Hi, sweetheart. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I wasn't sure either, I said honestly. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I saw the news. The nonprofit you're working for. They were featured in the paper. Your picture was there. Oh, I said. Yeah, they interviewed us about our community outreach work. You looked happy, she said. Really happy. I didn't know what to say. Because I was. And it felt almost like a betrayal to admit that. To her, to the past, to everything I had sacrificed in silence. I'm proud of you, she said gently. I know I haven't said that enough. Or maybe ever. I swallowed hard. Thank you. I know I failed you, she continued, her voice breaking. In ways I can't even count. I leaned on you when I should have protected you. I let them do it too. I don't know how to fix what's broken. Her honesty knocked the breath out of me. But I wasn't angry anymore. I had carried that weight for too long. Now I could see it clearly. How broken systems raise broken children who learn to fix everything except themselves. You don't have to fix it, I said quietly. You just have to stop pretending it wasn't real. Another pause. Then a sob. Soft and short, like she'd been holding it in for years. We didn't talk long. She didn't ask me for anything. She didn't defend Chloe or Jason. She just listened. And in that brief exchange, something shifted. Not everything. Not enough to rebuild what was lost, but maybe enough to stop the bleeding. After we hung up, I stood by the window and watched the late afternoon light stretch across my floor. A few years ago, that call would have shattered me, either in guilt or longing. Now, it just settled, like a page turning. That weekend, I went back to the spreadsheet. I opened what I've given, stared at the total for a long while, and then created a new document. I titled it, What I've Kept. And I started writing my integrity, my resilience, my ability to rebuild, my worth, my voice. Line by line, I reclaimed every piece of myself they didn't take, because I had never offered it in the first place. And then, something unexpected happened. An invitation arrived. Not from Chloe or Jason, not even from Mom. It was from a former client, someone I'd helped back when I was still freelancing nights to make ends meet. She now ran a boutique consulting agency and was expanding her team. She offered me a position, financial strategy lead, double my current salary, full benefits, creative freedom. I've been watching your work, she said in the interview. You're the kind of leader people underestimate. Until they can't live without you? I smiled. Not because I needed validation, but because I had finally learned how to recognize my own value before someone else had to point it out. I accepted the job, not out of desperation or obligation or escape, but because I wanted it, for me. The night before my first day, I opened a bottle of wine and toasted to no one but myself. To the one they forgot, I whispered, raising my glass. And the life she remembered to build anyway. It came in the form of a cream-colored envelope with my name written in cursive. No return address. Hand-delivered to my mailbox. Inside was a card that read, You're invited to a special family dinner, Saturday, 7 p.m. at Mom's. No drama. Just a fresh start. Underneath the invitation were the names Chloe, Jason, Mom. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I should have. Not because I was tempted, but because a part of me was stunned. They still thought I'd say yes. After everything. After the mockery. after the silence, after they vanished when I needed them the most. I could picture it already. The forced small talk, the half-hearted apologies wrapped in passive aggression, the expectation that I'd pretend it never happened, that we could just rewind, that I'd sit there, smile, and absorb the discomfort of everyone else's guilt again. And for what? To keep the illusion intact? They had mistaken my distance for pettiness, my silence for punishment. But it wasn't either. It was protection. It was choosing myself in a way I never had before. I didn't go. I didn't write back. I didn't explain. I didn't owe them anything anymore. That Saturday night, while they gathered in Mom's kitchen, probably asking each other where I was on my balcony, barefoot, legs tucked beneath me, wrapped in a soft throw blanket, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. The wind was cool, but I didn't move. I sipped tea. I put on the playlist I used to love in college, the one I'd forgotten existed during all those years of noise. I thought about how long I'd lived waiting to be invited into love, waiting to be seen, waiting to be valued. But you can wait your whole life for someone to say, "You matter." Or you can stop waiting and choose it for yourself. And that's what I did. I didn't need an audience anymore. I didn't need a seat at a table built on guilt and expectations. I had my own table now. They still don't know the full truth. They don't know how close I came to financial ruin for them, how many dreams I deferred, how long I kept carrying the weight so they didn't have to feel it. And maybe they never will. But that's okay. Because the power in my story doesn't come from whether they ever understood. It comes from the fact that I walked away anyway, that I built something stronger from the pieces they broke, that I laughed again, genuinely, without shame, without apology. And the irony, the woman they laughed at, the one they dismissed for not bringing a gift, she was the one funding their comfort, the one who held the scaffolding together, the one who left and watched their empire wobble. They thought I was the weakest, the smallest, the quiet one. But in the end, I was the one they had never been strong enough to stand without. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been the one behind the scenes, holding the weight, going unnoticed, this is for you. There's no prize for suffering in silence. There's no medal for breaking yourself to keep others whole. Your worth isn't measured in how much you can give. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. Because boundaries are not the end of love. Sometimes they are the beginning of finally being loved the way you deserve. And as for me, I didn't bring a gift to that party, but I took mine back that night. My peace, my name, my future. And no one gets to laugh at that.